pay attention to what the dialogue was during the session. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce David Huberman to give the first presentation.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Huberman. I'm a member of the ARIN Registration Services staff, and at least 50% within 1 year. And that makes sense mathematically. If you have a customer requesting a /24 from you, and you're not sure if that is an appropriate assignment, well, you find out what their utilization rate is projected to be. If they're going to use more than 64 IP addresses quickly, and they're going to use more than 128 over the next year, then clearly a 24 makes sense. But if they're telling you they're only going to use 100 IP addresses in the next year, well, then clearly they'd fit in a 25, wouldn't they? So a 24 doesn't make a whole lot of sense, as long as you understand that in section 4.3 we talk about you want to provide IP addresses to your customers that are good for 1 year, ideally. We have the requirements to SWIP. To register your assignments of subnets of /29 or larger and larger. To SWIP, you have to register the subnet, and the policy manual says customer organization information. The ARIN staff implement this very simply. The customer's name and the mailing address at which the service is provided. For a hosting provider, isn't that going to be the data center? You don't have to register your customer's home mailing address. You don't have to register their business's mailing address if you don't want to. You can register the address of the data center because that's where the servers are. And importantly, because that's the case, the residential customer privacy policy at ARIN does not apply to hosting providers. Residential customer privacy, where you're masking the customer's name and their street address, is for services provisioned at a residence. There's a very handy policy that's good for hosting providers. It's called Multiple Discrete Networks, MDN for short. So you start off your business and you open up in a data center and you start provisioning to customers and things are going well. And in your financial model, it makes sense to open up a second data center somewhere else in the country, somewhere else in the continent, somewhere else in the ARIN service region. If this second POP is not topologically connected or relevant to your first, if you're not running an IGP or what have you, you can apply for additional address space for the other POP, independent of how you're using space at the first POP, via the multiple discrete networks policy. This is a really handy policy in both IPv4 and IPv6 for hosting providers as they grow. We have plenty of hosting providers who have 4, 5, 6 data centers. They're not connected, there is no backbone, and so they're able to manage their address inventories independently. So as these POPs grow at differing rates, they're always able to get address space where they need it, when they need it. It's a really wonderful policy that is especially helpful for hosting providers. Finally, IPv6. It's really easy. Hosting providers are typically considered ISPs under ARIN policy. And getting an IPv6/32 or larger is really simple at ARIN. The policy simply says you're a known hosting provider at ARIN, which means you've been a subscriber member with us for 1 year or longer. Or, if that's not the case, if you're pretty new, all you need to do is show us a plan to provide IPv6 connectivity to customers, and that you plan on providing at least 200 assignments in the next 5 years. It's a very low barrier to cross, and as far as I know, all the hosting providers who have started to make the transition to IPv6 have been able to get through this with no problem. So now what? It's why we're here today. This is a BOF. The first part of this is a BOF to talk about what does and doesn't work vis-a-vis ARIN policy and hosting providers. Are any of the policies that we have in our policy manual today unclear? Are they imprecise? What policies don't work for you? Should ARIN policy give consideration to other situations that it doesn't today? And that's where we're at. So, come to the mic, discuss amongst you. This isn't just to provide feedback to ARIN, it's to discuss amongst yourselves as peers. There are a lot of people in the room. let's discuss this. So come to the mic and let's have a buff.